Hello, good morning, and
Hello, hello,
welcome.
hello.
Welcome to Morning Musings. We are Kathryn and Rachael, and together we're two life coaches who spend a lot of time helping people untangle the messes life tends to throw at us.
So every week we're going to be grabbing a cup of coffee and talking about the patterns and habits and coping mechanisms and downright weird things that we all like to do that keep us stuck in old patterns. If you've ever found yourself thinking, why do I keep doing this and why does this keep happening to me? You're in the right place.
Exactly. And so today we're going to be covering the thought or statement of I should be over this by now. And it's kind of that uh coming from that place of grief where it's like either I should be over this by now or I really just need to move on. And it is what it is, so I just need to get over it kind of attitude.
Mhm.
And it's a kind of a hard topic to talk about for a lot of people. And whenever I initially posted about this on Facebook, which if you're not, you should be following us on Facebook and YouTube and stuff. So, but whenever I initially posted about this, it really rang a bell for a lot of people, really resonated because a lot of people had not thought about grief is not just like when grandma or grandpa pass away, sort of thing, or mom and dad. It's grief can also come from what could have been but never
Mhm.
was. Whenever you have a breakup in a relationship, there is
Mhm.
grief associated with that. There is also the grief of whenever you become an adult and you realize your parents weren't perfect and they could have done things differently. Or
Or even as a
sometimes,
child, when you are real, this is something that happened to me um, with my father. Was I thought, as a young child until I was about 12, I think is when I found out that, that my dad was really involved in some pretty dysfunctional living, and it just really traumatized me at the time. Of course, I didn't have the skills to deal with it. I just made some pretty um, kind of dysfunctional decisions about how I was going to manage myself.
yeah, yeah. And that is the problem with grief when it is not processed properly, is that we will tend to slide into some dysfunctional patterns because of it.
You think?
Just a little bit, my favorite dysfunctional pattern that I like to participate in is suppression. So we'll just tap that stuff down into the crock pot and never look at it again.
But it's still cooking.
It's still cooking. That's
Still
the
cooking.
process.
Yes. I
Yes.
mean, I think that I should be over this by now is one of the cruelest things we can say to ourselves. It assumes grief has a deadline instead of a purpose. And I think that's important to understand. Grief has a purpose, and for it to fulfill its purpose in our lives, we do have to kind of be willing to be in it and feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, and it's very uncomfortable because you have a lot of really intense feelings that come with grief. And it's important to acknowledge that. It's entirely normal. It doesn't feel normal, but it is. It's entirely normal to feel those waves of intense colliding emotions,
Hmm.
ranging
Well, and
from everything from like profound sadness to
yes.
relief. Even that's something I've helped a lot of people with, is like after loss of any sort, there's sometimes some of that relief that comes with it of I don't have to be responsible for this anymore.
Yes, and then there's guilt
And
for
then
that.
there's guilt.
I mean, you can have all of the feelings. I know that when I was taking care of my father in his passing, that I had every single, sometimes in 1 minute, I would have every single emotion. I would be frustrated by not understanding the trauma that is sitting with our parents when they're dying. That is a type of trauma. I just never would have really realized that, I think, until I was doing it. And but
Yeah.
then there's the grief of what never was, that I grieved over the fact that I never was really able to get my father to understand. And that became clear that he was not going to understand, that I needed to grieve that and let it go, let it go, let just try to be present. So, but I think it's important to say that it can feel like it's about grief, but the grief, when I said the grief has a purpose, the purpose is finding our identity. That
Hmm.
once we grieve this, if this thing or relationship or circumstance is gone, or it never was and we're realizing it, then what what does that mean about our identity? What's still there? What still is available? What about us is still there, present, after that thing is gone and we let go of it?
Yeah.
Because I think our identities are so connected to the ideas that we're grieving or the people that we're grieving.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, yeah, so going through the identity work is really important, kind of going back to the basics of, what do I value and stuff, because grief has the habit of trapping us either in the past or where we think we should have been. So, some grief statements that people don't recognize as grief statements I should be further along, or I should be stronger. I should be there.
Mhm.
Um, so I should have this figured out already. So
Yes.
those tend to kind of come from that place of grief. And part of the identity work is recognizing that you don't live in the past, and you are not, like, this can be a goal over here, but if it's an unattainable goal, then you need to set it on the trophy shelf as a cute idea, and you need to actually set a real goal and then understand that you don't live there. You are over here making your way to that. And that's a really hard thing to do unless you're willing to sit down and have that honest conversation with yourself of, okay, who am I? Where am I at? And what do I value? Why do I
Mhm.
want this? Is that attainable? And what are my next steps to achieving it?
And one of the things that you can start with asking, I think the problem becomes, but I'm still hurting. So the problem is that when we say, well, I should be over this, that it does, like you say, it does predispose you to the idea that I should be somewhere else. I should be someone else. I should not be the person who is in this present moment hurting. But being willing to be in the present moment, not stuck in the present moment, but go ahead and be with yourself in that present moment, that's a skill in and of itself. Like you suggested, we can't be in the future. We can't possibly know or exist in the future. The past is gone. It's done. It's over. We can't go back and impact the past, but the present moment, definitely, this is where life is. Life is now. It's
Yeah.
never not. As Eckhart Tolle says, life is now. It's never not now. It's always now. And so that would lead us to the understanding that healing and grief is a thing we do minute by minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so it's completely okay to mourn the past, and it's completely okay to mourn the future, grieving the unfulfilled plans, the dreams, the timeline you'd envisioned, whatever. And or grieving that, space of like we talked with parents and stuff, which all of us go through at some point. Every adult child has to go through that
Has
grieving
to
process.
reconcile the fact that we weren't,
Yeah.
you know, the end all be all. And that comes from not having to, we get to a place where survival, our connection with our parent related to survival is no longer.
Yeah.
And it also comes if we've developed people pleasing
Hmm.
habits, especially related to our relationships with our parents. If we can't stop trying to people please our parents, what we end up with is we don't even know who we are and how to make
Exactly.
decisions for ourselves. So,
Yes. Yeah, and that's a huge part of that grief, where that grief comes from, is that you're basically having to um put your child self down
Mhm.
and
Yes.
say that this is the reality and this was not, or whatever the circumstance was. And then coming to grips with the fact that you now have to rebuild your identity. You can't keep
Mhm.
your identity there. So again, it's an identity thing. And
Yes.
I know that was something I really had to go through. And especially after I got married, there was a whole identity building process I had to go through. And and there was a grief that came with that because I'm separating myself even further from my childhood, further from my raising and stuff like that. And I didn't have a particularly, what I feel like, I didn't have a particularly traumatic childhood or anything like that. There was a lot of it that was good. My parents did great for standard human beings. So, as all of us do, and they did the best they could with what they had, and that I could recognize where they sometimes didn't do the best they could with what they had. And once I had my own daughter, there was the grief of, I did things differently with her and literally needed to have a moment where I was like, they could have done that with me. And there's a sadness that comes with that. But then there was also the, you know what? I know I'm going to screw up with my daughter in some ways. And I'm going to right now give my parents the grace. That was in the past. They did what they could with what they had. And I can have this moment of sadness. And then here's my next step. I'm not going to repeat that with my daughter.
Mhm.
So moving
Yes.
on with that, that was kind of the grief and identity rebuilding process
Mhm.
of separating myself from what I didn't want to take forward.
Those are,
And
that's really strong. Thank you for sharing that. That can be super hard to share, and also it probably was not as easy as it sounds like when you're bringing it up now, and it's almost procedural. But I know for you, it must have been very scary to make those changes and to also maybe separate a little bit. How did you separate your identity from that of your parents' child and needing to get their approval and needing that connection and feeling like it was about survival? How, how did that come? Because again, when you're connected like that, that is your identity. Can you be specific?
being specific. So,
Uh,
um,
or give
it
me an
was,
example at least of the moments where it was hard and you knew you were doing this work.
yeah, yeah. So it was, I think a really defining moment for me was um seeing my daughter do something that I remembered I had done one time and I had gotten punished for.
Hmm.
And right now I can't even remember what that moment actually was, what the action was. But when she did it, it hit me like just like a ton of bricks. There was that memory, and then getting punished, and then me looking at her and realizing she just did that because she's little. She was like 4, 5 or
Uh-huh.
so. And, I had that moment of I could react like they did, or I know better. I could react how I know she needs. And that's
Yeah.
what I chose. And then I went and sat down and I literally had a cry about it, and I sat with
Yes.
that. It wasn't fair that I got punished for that sort of
Right.
moment,
That, yes.
but had the cry and then had a little bit of a celebration because it's like that I literally just broke a cycle right
It's
there.
growth. Yeah, it's
Yes.
growth. Yeah. Ouch.
And
I mean, as a parent, I'm listening to this, as a parent too, who, I loved my daughter fiercely. But I also damaged her.
yeah,
So two things can be true. So when we're talking about I should be over this by now, this is work that we're doing, that has to be done.
yeah,
That as parents, we we are charged with the responsibility of encouraging our children to become separate beings. This is why we gave birth to them. They're not, she's not me. My daughter is not me.
Yeah.
And I had some really dysfunctional coping strategies that I had gone into life with. And so those things, those parts of me that were still dysfunctionally coping, even while I was raising her, that didn't have anything to do with her, but still, it doesn't matter. They were impacting her.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I think we have to do is recognize, yes, I was doing the best I could with what I had, and yet there were a couple of areas where I just
Yeah.
was not dealing with things well. So
Yeah.
I didn't do the best thing for her. We can always, parents always say, I did the best I could with what I had. Here's the reality, and I know this is true. It doesn't matter. My best wasn't in a few instances, my best was not good enough. It
Yeah.
wasn't, it doesn't pass the smell test. My best wasn't good enough. So yes, I loved and protected and developed and did my intentions were to develop and love and secure my daughter, fiercely. But I still I have to take along with me in this journey as I'm growing even now, in my 60s, the reality that I also messed her up, and
Yeah.
and here's the reality. I can't fix that for her. I'd love to go and fix it for her. She's stuck with it. She's stuck with it.
Yeah.
And so just like you,
Yeah.
when our kids become adults, it's now their job
Yeah.
to recover
Yeah.
and to grow and do that work. And so it's
And
interesting.
that's also part of the grieving process for over here on the kids side is that it's like, oh, well, great. Now I'm stuck with all this baggage and now it's my responsibility to take care of it, you know.
Yes.
But it's also one of those things that it is part of the human cycle. And that is
Mhm.
part of what makes us deliciously human is
Yeah. Oh, I love
that
that.
we have the opportunity to learn from those past mistakes and to not repeat those. And then also giving ourselves the grace to recognize that we aren't going to do it perfectly. Like that is a huge pressure. I feel like a lot of the newer generations have kind of put on themselves unknowingly. The millennials have been doing a lot of therapy. Gen Z is getting lots of therapy TikTok, which is really questionable. But
Maybe not. I mean, there's a lot of really great content
there
out there. There's
is.
some wackadoodle
There,
content out there, but
yeah.
um, but
And
there's some content out there that's, I think, saving lives.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So social media is just again it's a double-edged sword on
right.
so many fronts. But what I'm seeing with some of these younger generations is that they get super angry at their parents for not doing it right. And then whenever the question is posed to them on, well, what are you going to do differently with your kids? Their go-to is just, oh, I won't have kids because I know I'll mess them up.
Oof, yeah.
So
Well,
you
and
recognize that you're not going to do it right either.
right, right. I think the most important thing is we're seeing kind of a mixed approach. One of them, what that we're seeing is that there is a spate of a bigger increase in children that completely alienate their parents, or disconnect from their parents completely and cut them off. And that is depending, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that if you've got a parent who's been a criminal, or done criminal um, offenses against you, or whatever, even if they were just abusive and they continue to be abusive. But that's a really highly charged subject right now. There are so
Yeah.
many so many things happening, and I think it's been pushed a little bit by the therapeutic environment, But the thing is, it's important for us to help people understand, especially when you're talking about grieving this specifically the parent that you thought you had, grieving even the need to separate from a parent that may have been even too good, had showed up has shown up too much,
Yeah.
and you were hampered by how much they infantilized you. I can think of a couple of examples right now of that where,
Yeah.
and in fact, the research is really good, and it shows clearly that kids that are modelly coddled actually, and whose parents in their 30s and 40s continue to pay their way and not let them grow and become adults, are actually more hampered than the ones, unfortunately, that were abused.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, no matter what your reason is for needing to grieve this relationship and make those switches and shift out of that, um, the bottom line is it's there is a grief that hurts even more, and that is you're grieving the version of yourself that it either existed before, or that you've never been able to
Hmm.
become. So it requires you to do this work. I mean, the work
Yeah.
is required, and I think the important thing is we cannot allow people, kids, no matter what generation they are, to shirk that responsibility. And as parents, we can support them in that by saying, by owning it, by owning our mistakes and not saying, well, I did the best I could.
Right.
That may be part of the conversation, but the other part of that conversation is I did the best I could, but I know that I made some serious mistakes, and I'm open to talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then us as kids need to also kind of come to that place of accepting that we may never get closure on things. We may never get that. And it doesn't do us any good to sit there and replay things in our head, stay stuck in the loop. And then sometimes, honestly, as much as people have been, we had a big slew for a while of people wanting to just cut people out of their life. And now a lot of people are starting to recognize that that doesn't work super great. You end up having to come back and take care of your parents or deal with
Mhm.
things, or you end up with those people back in your life again. And so making sure that you're cutting the right people out for the right reasons and not just because you're ticked off. But then also recognizing that it's okay to put some distance for
Mhm.
a time if you need
Yeah.
to. Once you've come to that place of realizing, you've had that realization and now you're in grief, you need to go ahead and have some distance so you can process, not stay stuck
Mhm.
in the loop, but actually process it and then come back with that attitude of, I don't need closure. I've worked through this and I understand that, you did the best with what you had and that I still walked away damaged and I'm just going to do the best I can with the next generation
Well,
and
and
try
not
to make
only that,
sure
but
I
that
don't
goes for
repeat.
a relationship. If you're talking about grieving a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a breakup, the reality is that, the breakup or the divorce or isn't just the loss of a spouse, it's the loss of a wife or a husband. It's the person, so understanding that, yeah, you walked away from this damaged, but we now are still own the responsibility of healing that damage.
Yeah, you have to
And
separate your worth from the events and
yes,
from the person.
right.
That's the big thing with grief, whether that's in relationships or circumstances or even death in the family. You have to separate, you have to go through that process of separating who you are from those people, circumstances, or events. And then you have to really, really focus on your choices going forward. You have to move that energy into decisions you can control today. Like,
And that are for you.
yeah, Yeah.
that build
And
you. Yes.
yeah, and that will look like your self-care. Um,
Mhm.
you know, looking at your boundaries, your daily schedule, discipline, all of that. Um, and we're about to run out of time. I just got the little
Yes. I just
notification.
look, I got a little note too. Well, that's good.
So, but
Like you were saying, your self-care, the people that you allow to have access to you. So I think that, that's kind of an interesting aside. Of course, I'm the aside lady. But that is a huge part of our life, is who we allow to have access, and how we don't guard our time and our energy. So I being the yes person, was a thing for me. I just it could not say no. So if somebody asked me to make the 12 dozen, we've talked about this, the 12 dozen cookies, now I just have the capacity to understand who are these people in my life. What does this activity have to do with my actual responsibilities? And how do I move forward, either saying yes, and am I willing to say yes and not be resentful? So, understanding who gets access to you is a big part of this healing process. If you've got a person who is wearing you down, it's your responsibility to go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to limit that access. Like, I have friends that I love dearly, and I can talk to them for 10 minutes. And I do. I make space in my life for these people, but I
yeah,
don't kid myself about their capacity.
yeah,
It stopped being my friends, and the access I gave stopped being about my worth and started being about reality, which is I am the only person who determines my worth and value.
yeah.
But that's hard. You
It
have to,
is. It
it's what we're
is.
talking about, identity.
Yeah. And that is something, a word of warning, um, for how to kind of recognize that you're stuck in a cycle. There is the people I have known that have grouched about their circumstances or their parents or their relationships or whatever, they repeatedly find themselves in situations and relationships where they are getting hurt and they are constantly grouching about it. They are substituting the grouching for the actual work. And the more they grouch about somebody or something, the more likely they are to end up in that situation or worse. So if you
Yes.
find yourself constantly stuck on, I can't stand that person, or, I can't stand how they do that, or this situation, or my job, or whatever, that's your sign that you need to go ahead and enter that grieving process and work through that and
Mm-hmm.
start looking at who am I? What part of my identity is wrapped up in this situation
Mm-hmm.
or this
Yeah.
person? And then what is my next step out of this?
Right. How can I stop offloading? Because it's a kind of offloading. You're mad and you're angry because you're stuck in this job and you hate this job and you hate these people and you do blah blah blah. But you haven't. What have you done to shift yourself out of it?
Hmm.
And when you're stuck in that place, it means you're offloading your responsibility. And when I
Yep.
say offloading, I'm saying you're giving away the responsibility of your happiness and your contentment and peace.
Yeah.
When we give it away, we also give away the power to change our circumstances and to actually be in something with more alignment.
Yeah.
So again, we're talking about accountability and identity, but
Yeah.
all of these things can become difficult to go through in any kind of a situation that causes us to ask the question, why am I not over this? Children leaving home, retirement, losing a business, getting a health diagnosis that is
Yes.
super limiting. Healing from childhood trauma, of course, is part of this. All of those cases, we're asking, who was I then and who am I now?
And
And
who
if
do
we
I
don't,
want to
those are
be?
super important questions. What,
Yes.
when, if nothing, if all of this is gone, what parts of me survive? if everything's gone, if we don't, I think it's a good question to ask. If there's no one that we're going to make unhappy, or if everything's gone, what parts of me survive? The parts of me that, and I think these are questions. It's not, we're not, we're not what we do. We are what we are.
Yeah.
So that would be, in my case, that would be my love of nature, my love of animals, my my passion for the truth, my curiosity. I'm a curious person, and so I'm curious about everything. I'm curious about why those beetle bugs cross the road at a certain time of year. I'm curious about all these things. Those are the parts of me that get to know who I really am. Those are the parts of me that survive. And I think it's important to find that baseline when you're talking about why haven't I gotten over this? I haven't gotten over it because I'm still linking my identity to it.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. So if you find yourself stuck in that loop where you're asking yourself, why haven't I gotten over this? Or I just need to move on from this, but you feel like you're not, then that's a good time to probably come talk to somebody like us, life coaches who are experienced and trained in helping people find that next step and moving forward. We don't dig into a lot of the past. That's what therapists and counselors are for. We're there to get you from the middle to where you want to be. So, if you need any of that, or if you know somebody who does, then our socials and our websites are in the description below. I am okidokilife.wordpress.com, and then Rachel is mindhikecoach.com. And so you can find all of that and reach out to us. And then, of course, like keep watching our videos because they're packed with good, helpful stuff like this. And
Yes.
so if you're one of
Yeah,
those that you like to do it yourself DIY person, then keep watching videos.
yes, and I'm so glad everybody decided to come and join us today. You know, I think you can tell by the way that we talk about these things, we always will be and always are on a growth plane ourselves as coaches. Just because we do this as for a living doesn't mean that we're perfect. We all are in growth patterns. And
Yeah.
so I try to be really very honest about what growth pattern I'm in, um, just so that I can turn on a flashlight and help someone else that maybe is at a different stage of the same growth pattern. So we're not perfect, but we're honest,
Yeah.
and we study a lot, and we take a lot of classes so that we can keep our certifications updated so that we're giving you
Yeah.
the best
And
guidance that we know how to give.
yeah. And even if it's situations where it's like, I've not been there and I've not done that and I don't have the t-shirt, I still know the steps to help you go through this and we can both learn at the same time. So,
Exactly, exactly.
but
Well, it
yeah.
was so nice to see you.
Yes, this is awesome. And we're talking about doing live videos occasionally. If not, maybe try to do that weekly. We're gonna at least start trying to do it semi-regularly. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely leave a comment, say live videos, please, and let us know that that's something you would be interested in. And otherwise be looking for that in the future for us to be doing live morning coffee videos. So. And then we'll see you in the next video in the meantime.
All right. Thank you.